Welcome to the REI Hacker Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of real estate success. Join us as we dive into the journeys of top investors, mentors, and industry experts. Learn from their experiences and navigate the highs and lows of the investing world. And now, let's hand it off to our host, Benson Juarez.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. I'm really excited. My friend Mike Hambright is with us today. I'm super excited because he is a really extremely busy real estate investor and entrepreneur. He's a veteran in the industry. He's been around since 2000. He's rehabbed and wholesaled over 400 houses. He's also the founder of the Investor Fuel Mastermind and co-founder of Investor Machine, which is a cutting-edge data and technology lead generation platform. Mike, thank you so much for taking the time, man. I appreciate you. What's going on? Thanks for being here.
Hey, Benson. Thanks for having me here. Always good to see you and happy to be here.
Very cool. Way back in 2008 is when you got into the business, and you started by investing in some real estate, but you have a business background in finance. You came from the banking world. Tell me how you went from banking, which you were unfulfilled with, to the real estate world.
Yeah, there's a number of kind of corporate jobs that I had. I do have a finance degree, undergrad finance degree, and when I got out of college, it's a long time ago now. We're not going to talk about how old I am, but no, I worked for a very large bank and just felt unfulfilled. It just was really, I thought I was getting more into investments, which sounded kind of sexy. And then I really was a glorified auditor. So when you get out of college or you even go to college and you get a finance degree, like you think you're going to be like working on Wall Street, which it's possible that you could. But even though I worked for a massive bank, I was like back office type stuff that's just not as sexy. And right or wrong, just felt unfulfilled. And then jumped into another job that was in a corporate finance type role that I just felt the same thing, and ended up deciding that what I needed was more formal education. Even though I was the first person in my family to go to college, I decided to go back to grad school and get an MBA, which was great. It was a great experience. I met my wife. We were in the same program, so we met there. Lots of great things came out of that. But now I'm in a world, and I have been for quite some time, where I don't want to say none of that matters, but none of that was necessary. I think it has a role in everything. But so yeah, it was back in 2006, I had my dream corporate job, if you will, at the time. I thought it was an amazing job. And then one day, basically, my boss got fired. And then I got fired too because of just association. Or just there's no reason to have you if we don't have that guy anymore. And that company ended up firing like 35,000 people. It's another huge kind of retail company. And then went to a startup that was working great for a long time until they filed for bankruptcy. And it was just this realization. It was the real world, right? That's the world we live in. But for me, it was a wake-up call as to, wow, no matter how hard I work, for somebody else, by the way, I don't have any control over my destiny of what's going on. And so that was my foray into, I need to take my future into my own hands, and had always been interested in real estate investing, even with those corporate jobs, but just initially didn't have the time for it or the money. And then eventually when I had a little bit of money saved up, then I didn't have time. It was more of a time issue. And then when I left the company that, I got fired from my dream job, then went to this other company that filed for bankruptcy. I ended up leaving at that time. I could have stayed and probably would have been okay for a little while, but because somebody files bankruptcy doesn't mean they go away. They eventually did a couple of years later, but I just chose, hey, the heyday's over here, and the opportunity for me to make the kind of money that I had been making was gone. And so just dove into real estate. At that point, I didn't have an excuse. It's not like I had a lot of money, but I had a lot of time. And so I'm like, okay, this is the time to do it. By the way, that was 2008 when everybody else was running away from real estate investing. Right. And I was running in, and my wife and I, by the way, and we were smart people, but just naive to what was going on. But the reality is that actually was the best time to get in. We didn't know it, but the good part, and we didn't time that either. It worked out, right? I think the best time to get in is today, unless you have a time machine, right? Anyway, we dove in, and our first year, with no prior experience whatsoever, flipped 65 houses in Dallas, and went on to do that level for several years. And then all of a sudden things start to evolve. Now we've got a rental portfolio. Now I'm doing coaching stuff, and things just evolve from there. But that's how we got started. That's a short version of the story of how we got started.
That's pretty amazing. 65 houses your very first year.
Yeah.
there's so many people out there that are struggling to get their first deal done.
Yeah.
And that's possibly why you have this passion for coaching, is you see all these people start and stop or pour a bunch of money
Yeah.
into a project, pay for expensive education and never do it. Why do you have such a passion?
I've always been a connector. I've always been, even from, if I look back at even high school days and stuff, I was the guy throwing parties and bringing people together. And so I've always been that kind of party planner, if you will. And I guess there's probably an aspect of me that is like a teacher, I guess. I enjoy that aspect of it. And I also, I've always had a feeling, I think, that like when we first got into real estate investing, again, we had come from some big companies where there's constantly like it's somebody's birthday, so we're gonna have a happy hour. There's like constant like activities going on, right? And then my wife and I, and we did so. Part of I think why we did so well out of the gate is because this was like we didn't want our third strike to happen, right? I got fired from my job, then essentially lost the job because the company was going down. I was like, three strikes and you're out. We're not going to be out. We were backed into a corner at that point, just literally burning through savings and borrowing money and doing whatever we had to do to get by. And by the way, at that point, when we first started in real estate investing, we only have one son who's about to turn 17 now, by the way, but at the time he was about to turn 1. And so we had a new baby, and my wife, who had a very successful career on Wall Street and a lot of consulting and stuff like that, had quit her job to have our son, which we had 2 months before I left my last company. Real quickly, we went from a couple doing great to my wife quit her job, I lost my job, and we have a baby, and we're like, what the hell? What are we gonna do here? So it was one of those moments of desperation where you're like, we just have to figure shit out, and we can't dabble. Let's go big. And so I think that was part of it. Was I've seen a lot, like in hindsight now that I've done over 1,500 kind of video podcasts over the years to interviewed lots of experts like you, and in a format like this, is that I've seen a common thread of some of the most successful people got to a point to where I'll say they hit rock bottom, or their back was against a wall, and they just said, failure is not an option that I'm going to choose anymore, right? And it just something was a catalyst. Not that different from somebody that's unhealthy their whole life and then finds out they have cancer and miraculously loses 50 pounds and gets their health back and all that stuff, right? There's something that pushes you over an edge to get you back. And that truthfully is, I think I've forgotten at this point what your question was, but that is what people need to find a way to recreate without having to hit rock bottom. That type of attitude to where you're like, I'm not willing to accept the way it's been anymore. I'm plowing forward. Forgot
So
the
that was
question,
maybe
but
the inspiration. I asked you why, what's does the passion in coaching and
oh
mentoring
yeah.
come from? And it sounds like it was your own negative experiences that maybe you didn't want others to have to experience that to
Yeah, it's
get to a
that.
point where they
I
decide to
really do love
change.
teaching. Selfishly, it's created opportunities for me to do joint ventures and stuff like that, which is not, if you're in the business, it's not a selfish thing. It's a great way to, I think everything I do at this point is through a collaboration or joint venture or partnership of some sort. But yeah, I think for me, honestly, when I grew up in a very blue collar family. We didn't really have a lot. My dad worked in a factory, and my mom eventually became a nurse. But it was just really humble beginnings, and I saw like what was possible from being a real estate investor and being an entrepreneur. And the way that most people are living is just taking what they're given. And I saw an opportunity to break free. And at some point, after doing maybe 80 to 100 deals or something like that, some people started to ask me, would you coach me? And I was like, I don't know. And then it turned into a real thing. Like you have to really think about what is it that I'm teaching? And it forces you to think as an operator, like being a coach. I know there's people that say stuff about coaches, like those who can't teach or whatever. I think
Right.
that's total bullshit. Honestly, being a coach has made me a better operator in every way, because when you are explaining to somebody how to do something, it forces you to think like, how could we do that better? Yeah, why are we still doing it that way? Or it really forces you to reflect on how to get better and better, right? And I don't know, there's some selfish reasons in there because I think that coaching made me better. There's a piece of me that loves to impact people's lives. Probably a little bit of, there's probably some stuff in there that is a combination of, I really want the best for people, but probably some ego that makes you feel good to be the guy
Sure.
that can change people's lives, and probably there's some opportunities to level up your business as well. So probably lots of reasons
Oh
ultimately, but
yeah.
yeah.
One of I don't know if it's Maslow or there's somebody who's defined like the basic human needs, and one of them is contribution,
Yeah.
right? So that's you're tying into something that's real. It isn't something that people
Yeah.
just determined wasn't anything important. It's there is a basic human need of wanting to give back and help
Yeah.
others. And I think that you've tied into that well. And you use the word operator, which leads me to think about execution. Everybody's got good ideas. There's a lot of good people who join the industry who has these dreams and has ideas of success and has some basic impression of what to do, but they don't have a real good plan. And so you're big on processes and systems.
Right.
And so you've developed some really cool things that you've implemented in your business. And now you actually give to people who are in your masterminds and are in your circles of influence and in your groups. Tell me about how you took those experiences and developed a process.
Yeah. And it's a work in process too. Like we're constantly changing those things. We're constantly like thinking about it. In fact, I had a bunch of conversations with my team today because we have our Q2 goal planning session tomorrow for for Investor Fuel and like our internal one. So I think the other thing that I realized as time has gone by is there's a ton of, so if you were to have a pie chart of people that are real estate investors, right, or want to be real estate investors, there would be the biggest slice by far would be those that want to do it but haven't started yet, or they've dabbled with it but they haven't done a deal yet. That would literally be like 90%. And then when you get inside of the small slice of pie, there's another 90% or whatever, probably 75% that have done a deal or two and it didn't work out very well, or they didn't know how to turn it into a business. They found a deal because it was like they knew somebody and they worked their way into a deal, but that's not a business. They just an opportunity crossed their plate and they ran with it, right? And but it's not a business and they don't know how to make that consistent. And then you get to a smaller slice and there's people that are doing this full time and this is what they do for a living, right? And inside now I'm not going to try to do math here with you, but
It's
uh it's a
25%
really
of
small
the
slice at this point.
10%.
It turns out there's a really small slice of that bigger pie, and a small slice of the smaller slice of the smaller slice keeps getting smaller of those that are actually doing a lot of volume. And that is what Investor Fuel, the mastermind, is that you're a part of as well. Is people, and we have a few groups inside of there, people that are doing 10 to 50 deals a year, people that are doing 50 to 100 or 100 and up, and we've got folks that are doing 6 or 800 deals a year. And so we have these kind of different groups. And the reason we have groups is the people that are doing 10 to 50 aren't ready to be in conversations in a detailed level with those that are doing 100 plus because their operations are different. Their teams are different. They tend to be, if you're doing a deal a month, a deal or two a month, even, you probably don't have much of a team. You're still working hard and doing everything yourself, but your goal is to get to that next level probably. And so I talk a lot about scale and not from the purpose of because I want to be a social media guru and drive a Lambo and all this stuff. There's nothing wrong with having nice things, but I think the purpose of scaling is to buy your time back. And certainly that is that generally is the first step. So if you're doing a couple deals here and there, or even a couple deals a month, you can't afford to have a dedicated salesperson, a dedicated admin in your office, probably not even have an office that's outside of your home, which you can have or not have. But the point is like real businesses have overhead that they have to cover. And a lot of people that are in this business and other businesses too, we'll keep it to real estate because that's what we know, is that a lot of them have a job. They're self-employed. Like their business card, they may sign documents in their titles of president or CEO or whatever, but they're self-employed. If you don't do a deal 1 month, like you're suffering bad and you can't go on vacation, or God forbid anybody gets sick, like you're gonna have a hard time taking time off because you're the hamster in the wheel still, right? And that is why, and for myself, but for other people, is why we focus on creating systems and processes to help people get from here to here, because not because I want to see people show up with shinier watches each time I see them necessarily. And then, again, nothing wrong with that, but I want them to build businesses that allow them to buy their time back. And the way you buy your time back is with kind of say, quote, excess profit. If there's a thing, I'm covering my bills and I have extra money. Therefore, I could go buy something or blow it on something that will give me immediate gratitude, or I could invest that back into my business, which is for a lot of owners and operators that are operating at a small level and some that are even operating at a very high level, their name is on a lot of seats on their org chart in their business. In some instances, all of them. And so it's okay, how do I replace myself in these things that I'm not good at and I don't even like doing and I can't do it all anyway, by the way. So how do I start to buy my time back by basically buying somebody else's time, which is an employee, to put them in those seats that I can't sit in anymore, or I shouldn't be in.
Yeah, there's definitely this glorification of entrepreneurship out there on social media.
Yeah.
And one of these terms that it hurts a little bit, but I understand that people don't get it. They're like, oh, I own my own business. I own my own business. I own my own whatever. And it's, yeah, you do, but all you've done is just created a job for yourself that you
Yeah.
now are your own boss, which a lot of people don't thrive underneath. Like they need someone to hold them accountable. And
Yep.
so now they're at their own boss. And then everything that you thought entrepreneurship was is not, right? So now you're working longer hours. You've got
Yeah.
less control over what happens. You're putting out fires most of the time. You're not traveling the world and working off of beaches. There's so much that comes with it that they don't realize until they're already there.
Yeah.
And most of them fail because they just don't know how to operate within those entrepreneurial boundaries. And it's a wake up call for a lot of people.
Yeah. There's two things. And you say most fail, like some of it is failure. That could mean a couple things. For some people, that's failed, like it's in the past, like it's over, like you're done. And then
Mhm.
there's also failure, like failing, of it's not working out the way that I thought. I'm still doing it, but it's not what I thought it would be. And I think that's where most people are stuck. There's some people that failed and it's over. And I talk a lot about kind of failure being a stepping stone to like success, because you have to fail your way forward. Like you have to be failing all the time. It's just part of the process to learn and get better. It's like when you were 3, 4, 5 and you learned to ride a bike, like you fell a bunch of times, hurt yourself, but you learned along the way of, okay, don't put all my weight on this side. Don't put it on that side either. And like you learn how to balance, right? And that is the process of failing forward. But a lot of people get stuck. And so and it's not for me to decide that somebody is unhappy with where they're at, but I see it because I support hundreds of professional real estate investors and I see people that are stuck. And I was that guy too. Like we're making more money than we've ever made before. So by most measures, we're successful, quote successful. But we were fortunate. Again, I didn't grow up with a lot. So when my son was little, we were like traveling through Europe when he's 5 and like doing all these amazing things that I certainly never got to do at any age when I was growing up, let alone 5. But when I look back now, we got to see a lot of amazing things and we took a lot of amazing pictures and experienced a lot of amazing things. But I was on the phone the whole time, like literally, or back, this is gonna sound so bad back then, but trying to find a fax machine or whatever we have to do to get this contract done or get a closing done or whatever, right? Jumping through a bunch of hoops to get stuff done. And so we were successful by most measures, but very fragile, I'll say. The business was very fragile. If something happened to me or my wife, we would have been out of business real quickly. And so I think that's a whole nother topic, not to go down another rabbit hole. But for people that have a business that's so dependent upon you, think about what would happen to your family if you got knocked out of the game. Because you got a lot of people that are dependent upon you, plus your employees and everybody else too, right? So it's really, I think it's for a lot of people, again, I'm not here to tell people what their goals should be, but on some level, as an entrepreneur, you should feel a duty to pull yourself out of the business as much as possible because you've got a lot of people that are dependent upon you, and you getting knocked out of the game or getting sick or something happening and the business has to shut down the next day is going to impact a lot of people, most importantly your immediate family, right? So how do you build something
Mhm.
up to where you have an insurance policy? For some people that's having a team that the business could still run, and then for some people it's accumulating assets over time. We have a rental portfolio, and so maybe the fix and flip money or the wholesale money is going to go away tomorrow if something happens to me, but I have this rental portfolio that will feed my family for as long as they need it. So anyway.
So that the process of replacing yourself means just hiring other people likely, right? So you're putting people in the right seats so you can take hats off and then you don't have to be in the business every day and then you can spend more time doing what you want. And so you did that along the way, obviously, and then that's when you launched Flip Nerd, right? So tell me about how the origin of Flip Nerd and how that evolved.
Yeah, so Flip Nerd it's still around. We just don't really focus on it a whole lot. But Flip Nerd was, in fact, there was a brand even before that. It was called like This is gonna sound so bad for anybody that's like tech savvy. This will take us back to probably like 2000. I'm not joking, 2009 or so. 2010. I think Al Gore had just invented the internet at that time or something. It was called Property Vault. It was like terrible, Property Vault. And it was some content, it was a little bit of coaching stuff, and it was a way to post your properties online. This was like literally 2009 or 10. So think of that in the context of Privy. Like this was like the equivalent of a typewriter, essentially. But what happened is I started doing a lot of coaching type stuff in Dallas, where I'm based at, and JVing with people and coaching. And then I realized that, hey, I should cast a wider net that was online, right? And I hired a guy in my office at the time, which I wish I had somebody like this now, which I have a couple people that help, but I literally had a videographer that I just started having follow me around. This is probably 2010 or 11-ish. And he was super lazy. I don't know if he's ever going to watch this, but he was like sleeping at the office half time. I'm like, what's going on here? Some young kid that was doing kind of videography for me. And I was rehabbing. At any time we were rehabbing 5 to 10 houses, like at any given time. And I had to go check on them all the time. So I'm like, just follow me around and we'll just talk about what's working and what's not. And so then it turned into, gosh, I'm creating all the content. And for anybody, I don't know if you've ever done any podcasts like this, because I've done a few and I hate it, is me talking to the camera with no guests. Like I could talk to you. We have an hour scheduled today. I don't know how long your typical podcast is. The reality is I could talk to you for 8 hours today. Like we could literally just talk about this and that and this and that. Eventually you'll get tired of me, but I could banter all day long. But whenever I tried to create a video of me talking to the camera, it's 5 minutes in. I'm like, that's all I got. I don't even know what else to say.
I know. It's tough.
And I felt that way with creating
problem.
other content, as me talking to the camera guy who wasn't talking back. And it just got to the point where I was like, this is boring content. Like I want to talk to people, the social person in me. And so then I started Flip Nerd, which started as a podcast. And at the time I think I was the number 6 real estate podcast in existence. So it was some guys that are good friends of mine now, like Joe McCall and Matt Terrio and a few other folks that you would know, Sean Terry and a couple guys like that. And so it was just early on, and I didn't think I'm an early adopter. I just thought, hey, I like this format. And so now there's, I don't even know, thousands of real estate podcasts, which is totally fine. But at the time we were creating a lot of, and it was just like this. It literally was identical to this. Instead of recording it on Zoom, we were recording it on Skype at the time, which I don't even know if Skype's around anymore, but
it still is.
Yeah, I don't know who would use that, but my dad still has an AOL address, so who knows. But yeah, it was very much the same thing. And that led me, without getting into a lot of details on Flipner, let's just say that it was a podcast. It ended up being a lot of other things, the brand of my coaching back then and all that too. But in the process of meeting all these amazing people, and at that time, it was still early in social media. There really weren't a lot of people using social media anywhere close to the level that we do today. So I started meeting other great people. Like I think in the first couple dozen people that I interviewed, I met Matt Andrews, and Matt has become like a great friend. And that was like 12 years ago or something now. But back then, whenever I did podcasts, because there wasn't social media and you didn't know who all the players are, you couldn't go out and look at all the other podcasts and who are guests on these podcasts. We'd be like, hey, Benson, appreciate you being with me today. Really enjoyed this conversation. Man, do you know like 5 other people that would be a good guest for my podcast? We were like literally asking for who else do you know that is a player that I should know? And that was kind of the network of how that started. And then the podcast turned into, at some point, a couple of years in, and this will take us back to almost 7 years ago, I realized I enjoy coaching new people. I love seeing people that have that transformation of like never done a deal to like actively doing deals and quitting their job and being able to travel and do things for their kids that they couldn't do before. I love that. What I really love is being around people that I would consider more of a peer, people that are operating at a high level, that are entrepreneurs, that are going all in, that also have this kind of servant mentality where they want to help other people. And that was really the beginning of Investor Fuel, the mastermind, to say, hey, I have a pretty good network of people that I like, and I really love hanging out with them on a podcast, but that's not enough. Like, how do I start a community of people that could get together and share ideas and learn and grow together? The thing about coaching, new coaching, one of the things that I don't like about it is, I say this all the time, or I've said this many times in the past, it's way easier for me to show somebody how to go from 20 to 40 or 50 deals a year than it is to get somebody from 0 to 1. Because there's so much mindset stuff there about, does this really work? When they're questioning whether they should be spending time on this instead of their job or whatever. There's just a lot of mental things you have to overcome. Once somebody has quit their job and they're actively doing a couple deals a month, it's easier to say, let me show you how to get from two to five a month, because they're not questioning whether this works anymore. They're just like, what's the process for that? Or how do I do this? And anyway, I'm on a little rant here, but that's probably why I focus so much on processes, because I want to do stuff that can help other people get from 2 to 5 or 5 to 10. And that's what I enjoy the most, is being around people that I would consider committed entrepreneurs that have freedom in their life. Our families can travel together if we want to. They can take time off to come to an event or do things and things like that.
I think it's a huge distinction. You're so right about the mindset thing, people's limiting beliefs. We all have them. We all have them at different levels.
Sure.
For me, they come out like when there's something brand new I haven't done before or I haven't done in a long time. My limiting beliefs just come out of nowhere. And it's something I battle, because you use the analogy of us riding bikes, right? So yeah, you learn how to ride a bike. And then what did I do when I was a kid and I could ride a bike? I went and built a huge freaking ramp. And then I just went and launched myself off it, broke my arm. We'd go and we'd carve out like these bike trails and that were on the side. And so we we're always like putting more and more obstacles in front of ourselves as entrepreneurs. And so we're always growing and doing these things. And so that's why I've really enjoyed being part of the Investor Fuel Mastermind, because I've got to spend time with operators, people that have done way more deals than I have. And someone said it really well, where they said, you come to these masterminds or these groups because there's always somebody that you can emulate, somebody who's done more than you, has more experience, somebody you respect that you can reach up to, but don't ever forget to reach down and pull people up with you. That's what's so great about groups like yours.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know anybody. There's nobody in Investor Fuel that I know. And even outside of Investor Fuel, there's nobody that I know that came out of the womb being this expert house flipper. I don't even know many people that did it because their parents did. Every once in a while you hear somebody like, oh, I learned this from somebody in my family, but most of us found our way there through some other channel. And I think that a lot of us feel some obligation to give back. And even people that are, I'll say this doesn't, for some people this sounds selfish, but if you find ways to do deals with people, especially when they're first getting started, that's what I tell people all the time. What should I do if I'm just getting started? I'm like, either just go work for another investor or find somebody to JV where you can do some components and they can do some components, because that wisdom is worth a portion of the profit, right? It's otherwise the reason a lot of people fail and quit is because they're afraid of something that you and I say is, that ain't nothing to be afraid of. Don't worry about that. But a lot of people are, because it's just like unknown, right? So if you, when you, and I'm guilty of that in other things in my life. It's like, I don't really know how to do, I'm stuck. And then sometimes we just move on to another thing. But if you're like, oh, you're stuck. Oh, let me show you. Pop, pop. And they're like, oh, that was easy. And then you don't get stuck there anymore. You're going to get stuck on another level. But that's what being around other people can do for you, is things that we get stuck on that sometimes cause us to stop just ends up being a speed bump and not a stop sign.
Yeah. You're rebranding some things, right? So I'm part of the Investor Fuel Mastermind, which is more operators. People have done deals. And I like how you've broken it out, because people have different needs at different levels, even when they already have some success. But you have the Investor Fuel Live that is more for newer people. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so Investor Fuel Live actually is not for newer people. It is really still more for the pro level investor, but it's the one event a year, and this is our 7th year, by the way, that we sell tickets to outside people to come in to an event. And for us, honestly, it's a feeder for people that might join Investor Fuel, for them to come check it out. And it's not truly a mastermind like you were at the last one. So it's not truly a mastermind in the sense that we do what we call hot seats, and we have all these special type events and stuff that we do, modules that we do inside of Investor Fuel, the mastermind. It's more of a speaker series. And so it's set up to where essentially, and almost always, and especially this time, every one of the speakers is an Investor Fuel member. They're all operators, and we've got, I think everybody's done at least a couple hundred deals. There's some people that are on there that are speaking that have done, one guy's done over 2,500 wholesale deals, another one's done over 5,000 fix and flips. And a lot of people don't, I'm not trying to take anything away from these guys. They just have their head down. They're not on the speaking circuit. In fact, they're nervous about speaking. What value could I add? Could you flip 5,000 houses? Come share pretty much anything you want. People are going to benefit from this. And so it's one of those events where I don't pay anybody to speak. We don't bring in a bunch of like flashy, big name speakers that are going to attract people. These are just operators that are going to tell you exactly what they're doing that's working right now. And so it's bittersweet. On one hand, if I hired a bunch of like big name speakers to come in, it would attract people, which people are attracted to that stuff. And on the other hand, it's just real information. This isn't pie in the sky stuff. This is like what's working right now through all the shifts in the market and COVID and rate changes and everything. Like this is what's working right now. And for everybody that's speaking, we always have the conversation like, what do you want me to speak about? I'm like, look, you have 30 minutes each, times about 18 to 20 speakers. Like you have 30 minutes to share your very best tip on sales and marketing, lead generation type stuff, or sales tactics. Could be creative acquisitions, could be dispo, could be some business operations, some key component that's changed your life. And that is literally
Mhm.
what I tell people. I'm like, come speak on one of those things. And the content is just great. And for, as we've talked about, people that are actively doing deals right now, you're just like one small nugget away from going to, it's a little bit of mindset and a couple nuggets to get from 2 to 4, 2 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, wherever you're at. It's small little nuggets or small little levers that you hear or pick up on, and that somebody can get you from being stuck. Like I tried that and I got stuck here, and they're like, no, do it like this. And you're like, oh, wow, I never thought about that. It's just some little nugget or tip away from a breakthrough. And that is what this event is all about.
Having been to both, like having gone to events where it is the circuit, right, where the
Yeah.
speakers come through, I see that more as it's more about mindset, right? You got these people who have been there, done that. That maybe they're doing some coaching or mentoring. Maybe they're still an operator, likely not, but their job now is speaking, right? So they're usually speaking really high level stuff about, and it's a lot of stories. They tell a lot of stories to get
Right.
people inspired and amped up and get them to maybe overcome some limiting belief and just take action and whatever that action is. And it usually is just action, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Investor Fuel Live for me was seeing guys on the stage that have already been there, done that. They're not trying to inspire me to go do a deal. They're saying, this is what worked for me. These are the things that you can do in your business today that will help you succeed.
Yeah.
So it's like actionable information that you can implement in your business right now, not some idea that you have to try to reach for. They're not trying to get you to go accomplish your real estate goals.
Yeah. Yeah. If I'm being honest, the speakers that are there might be a couple of exceptions. There's probably a couple of exceptions, but most of them don't have anything for sale. They're just operators and they want to give back, and they're doing me a favor by coming to speak at an event. And so it's some hybrid of them like doing me a favor and them always wanting to add value, or I'd like to be able to speak a little bit more, share some of their knowledge, right? They don't have anything for sale. I tell everybody, pitch anything. This is a no pitch event. Like just come share your best knowledge. And yeah, it's really just people coming to share like what's working now. And it's, by the way, we have no behind the stage area typically. We're going to a new hotel now, so don't quote me on that. But historically, there is no green room or behind the stage. They get off stage and they come sit at tables with all the other people that are like, hey,
Yeah.
can you tell me, can you, on the next break, can you tell me a little more? Oh yeah, I'll share with you. I'll clarify that for you. And so our speakers are usually, again, coming to hang out for the whole 3-day event and willing to share. They're not going to tell anybody like, I can tell you more about that if you just buy my program. Like other than a couple of exceptions, I don't think anybody has anything for sale though.
Yeah.
So cool in that regard. But by the way, I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan. I love the mindset stuff too, but this is not what Investor Fuel Live is. Not what that is. It's not that you won't get motivated, and
Oh, you
there's
do. You
people that
leave
are get
there
up and share some
amped.
amazing stories about overcoming some big things in their life for sure, because that impacted them. But it's way more than just mindset. It's also tactics, right?
Yeah. And I think that what really makes your brand different. Investor Fuel is about tactics. It's about execution. It's about operating and implementation. And that I think is what's missing a lot in these guru groups that people grow is it's like, raw, come join my course. And they give them everything they need. They give them their entire like processes, all of the documents and the contracts, and it's okay, here, just go do it. And again, most people aren't going to. And that's where I think that an event like Investor Fuel Live can be like just that thing that is missing from some people who are listening and who are thinking like, man, I just need that extra thing to be able to go and do some more deals and scale my business. When's the next one?
So it's coming up here real fast. It's April 15th, 16th, and 17th.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the DFW area. If you're local, most people come from out of area. but it's in Grapevine, Texas, which is basically just a couple miles from. So a lot of people don't really realize this, but DFW Airport is technically in Grapevine, Texas. It's 5 miles from the north entrance of DFW Airport. But yeah, April 15th, 16th, and 17th is Investor Fuel Live. And my mastermind, just to put it out there, the Investor Fuel is a life-changing community, and it's not cheap, right? It can change your life, but it's not cheap. But Investor Fuel Live, it's ridiculous. Like it'll cost you, your flight there will cost you more than it costs to come to the event. You just have to get there, but it could still change your life. And there's a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
folks that come, and we do it for, there's a lot of reasons why we do it, but it helps us meet people that we might want to do business with one way or another. And it really changes a lot of lives as well. And it's coming up quickly though, for sure.
So you do them at least once a year. So you guys, if this one coming up is too soon, there's going to be another one. So just stay tuned. You go to, we'll put some links in the description of the podcast here so you can go and check it out. If you can't make this one, there's going to be another one coming up in the near future.
This is the
as well.
first year we're considering doing a second one. But for the last 7 years, there's only been one a year actually. But yeah, we are considering maybe going to 2 a year. So stay tuned if you can't make that. If there's any way you can make it, you should.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different things that go into a successful real estate business mindset. You have to overcome that, decide to do some deals. And then you get to the next real obstacle in this, which is like lead generation. Right. And so you recognize that there was a need for a systematic approach to lead generation, which is why you created Investor Machine. Right?
Machine, yeah.
So tell us about that.
Investor Machine, this summer will be our 5th year anniversary, and we are done for you. And we've evolved a lot. A lot of people don't even know what I'm about to say. There's probably even people that are in Investor Machine that don't know what I'm about to say. But it is a done for you lead generation service, but it's evolving quite a bit, and I'll come back to that. But yeah, for sure, having run my mastermind for the time we started this a couple of years, and having had done coaching for many years before that, the single biggest question is always, how do I get more leads? What's the best list? And the problem with real estate investing, and probably any small business, is when people start, they have to be good at everything. Like they're wearing every hat in the company: sales, marketing, transaction coordinator, raising money, running errands, like everything. And I've just come over time to realize that, and the industry has evolved a lot too in the time that I've been in, is you don't have to do all these things by yourself. There's a couple things that you need to be really good at, like salesmanship is really important, but you don't have to do your own transaction coordination. Like you could bring somebody on if you have enough volume, or you can just go hire a transaction coordinator service to outsource it to. And so there's been, over the past 5-6 years, there's been a lot of services that can offer what it is you need in your business without you necessarily having to hire somebody to come do it in your office. Now, you can hire somebody to come do it in your office, but there's 2 problems with that. One is you can't afford to have redundancy. So you're probably not going to have 2 marketing managers because you can't afford that. And if that one person quits, you're screwed. And that's the lifeblood of your business. And by the way, if that person isn't very good, you're also screwed. And so there's like kind of fractional services, or there's fractional CFOs, there's fractional CMOs, there's bookkeeping services you can outsource to, there's transaction coordination services you can outsource things to. It's like, why wouldn't you? That's a way more cost-effective channel than you hiring somebody in-house. And by the way, those services that serve 100 real estate investors or more, like I promise you, they're constantly getting better because they have to evolve. And there's just no way you could compete with somebody that does this for 100 real estate investors or more, because they just have a specialty and they just continue to learn. That's how Investor Machine started. I got so tired of like, how do I do this? How do I do this? And people saying they're going to do it. Well, I didn't do it yet. Or like, why are you asking me for the 16th time? What's the best list to mail to? And I'm like, let me just do it for you. And so it really took, and I had been thinking about it for a couple of years before we actually started it. Investor Machine, I have a business partner, Jason Lewis, who is probably the largest wholesaler in Utah, highly respected guy, also in Investor Fuel. In fact, we met because he joined Investor Fuel. And at that very first event 5 years ago, we started talking about my idea, and he had a couple components of that. And we're just like, it just worked where we just came together. And that's really where Investor Machine was born. But it's not just, there's a lot of people that say they have the best data. There's a lot of people that are an agency. We really have evolved from a data company that generates leads for people, kind of white glove, mostly through direct mail, to where at this point we estimate that we've generated $250 million minimum, $250 million in revenue for our customers over the past 4.5 years. But we have about 60 or 70 people in our company that all they do is data mining, data analytics, data scientists, programmers that are creating our software that kind of help with all this. And so we really are a data company, but that's evolved to where now we do pay-per-click and SEO, Facebook ads, we do all inbound channels, and we do some really unique stuff with our data that nobody else is doing, like creating custom audiences on Facebook or in Google that we market to the same audiences you're mailing to that we've predicted are the people that are most likely to sell next. But it's evolved now to where we're going forward is completely outsourcing your marketing arm, where we do lead gen for you, but we're also listening to your calls. We're watching your sales pipeline. We're helping you get better at follow-up and sales skills and all those things, because what we've realized over the past year and a half, this is going to be intuitive now, but in this last kind of downturn in the market, we're like, because all service providers, the first thing that a lot of real estate investors cut is marketing, which I think it's the last thing you should cut in any business, but a lot of people cut that. So we took a dip with the market being down because a lot of investors took a dip. And what we used that time for is to say, like, how do we get better? And we realized that a decent portion of the problem is people that are not great operators, or they could get better. They could have better sales skills, or they're not answering their phone live, or they've done other things that cause problems. And so what we've realized is we could generate leads for people and serve it on a silver platter, but if they don't answer their phone live, it doesn't matter how good the lead is. And so we started to do some studies and started getting access to people's call rail accounts and stuff like this. And we found, gosh, our average customer is answering the phone live 50% of the time. So 50% of the time they're not. And so we're like, okay, how do we get better at this? And we're like, okay, we started using a new system where the calls route through us, and we can listen to all their calls, and we can see how many times they're answering, like what percentage of the time are they not answering the phone live, and we can score their call to say you're not doing you're over screening, or why are you saying this, or you need a better script or whatever. And we're trying to help people like all through the sales and marketing pipeline to improve. So we're really like an in-house kind of CMO, like a sales and really a marketing arm for investors to improve that whole process. Because again, no matter how good the leads are, if you're dropping the ball throughout the sales pipeline, which can always get better, then that's a problem. And the other thing is, for bigger operators, they've hired people to do all those things. Now I have somebody that does lead intake, I have a lead manager and all this. But what we found is that sometimes people assume that because they're paying somebody that they're doing the job that they hired them for. But we've had plenty of operators that like come back and, oh my God, I'm only answering the phone live 20% of the time. And then they literally go fire somebody. Like, they thought it was working, but we're looking over their shoulder now saying, nope, they're costing you money, a lot of money, by the way. And so now we're that whole oversight of the kind of marketing and sales pipeline as well. That's where we're going. And so
then at what point do you just add a call center to the whole ecosystem?
We have that now. And in terms of actually taking calls for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did that early on. And this is one of the things that I found. I'm not saying that we won't. And I have some friends that run call centers. And so not to say anything bad about them. Early on, we took calls and we scheduled it in people's calendars. And one of the things I've realized is if you try to do everything for people, then you're the scapegoat to it not working. And so investors have to have responsibility in doing these things. And so rather than completely do it for them, because at some point you're like, why don't I just spend the money on advertising and be a national investor and just go buy a ton of houses? And there's breakdowns and all those things. But if you try to do too many things for people, then they give up some of their they like dodge responsibility. And then if something doesn't work out, it becomes your fault. So I give this analogy. I gave this, there's a totally different reason today. I have a son that's 16, he's about to turn 17. And there was a period not too long ago where he was late for school a couple of times. And then all of a sudden I found that I just start waking him up every day. Every day I'm like, hey, you up? Are you up? His alarms go off, but I'm the ultimate alarm. And so what ended up happening was I'm responsible for waking this kid up every day now. And then I got to the point where I was like, this should not be, by the way, you need to learn how to live your life. You're almost 17. So I'm not going to wake you up anymore. If you're late for school, that's your problem. If you get 5 of those, you're going to have in-school suspension or whatever the consequences are. Miraculously, a couple of times he was late, got written up, and next thing he can get himself up on time and I don't have to do it anymore. And so he needs to be self-sufficient. And I guess that was
Yeah.
an analogy to show that real estate investors need to be self-sufficient too. It doesn't mean you shouldn't outsource some things, but if we do too much for them, they become dependent upon you. And I don't feel like that's serving investors well. I want them to get better, but I don't want to do it all for them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've done that in my business too. Investor Machine is a great way for operators to really hand off some of the things that are holding them back. The marketing functions, lead generation. It sounds like you're doing a lot of different things, not just for mailers, but also online advertising and pay-per-click and a bunch of cool stuff to bring in those leads. But they need to have the ability to execute the conversion of those leads into actual deals, right? That's the sticking point for them.
For sure. And the other big reality is, I think for a long time, real estate investors are like, think a lead's a lead, and a lead is not a lead. There's very different qualities of lead. And in our model, we use big data. We have about 70 people in our company that all they do is data analytics, data science, data mining, things like that. And we have gotten really good. We're at a point now where anybody you would consider our competitor, like they're nowhere close to us, and not everybody quite knows that yet, but where we're going is just really incredible with predictive analytics of who is most likely to sell next. And so when you realize that cost per lead doesn't matter at the end of the day, or cost per contract doesn't even matter, because what really matters is for every dollar I put in, how many dollars do I get back? On inbound leads, for example, from direct mail, SEO, pay-per-click, Facebook ads might leave it out of there. The typical ROAS, the return on ad spend, the profit on inbound leads is typically 200 to 300% higher than outbound leads, texting and cold calling. And not to knock those things, they have a place, but the reality is when somebody raises their hand and contacts you, they're just going to convert at a higher level. They're more serious about selling, and the profits are going to be higher because that's a sign of motivation if they contact you. And I'm not here to knock. We sell data to people that want to text and cold call as well. But the reality is we really view ourselves more as a marketing partner to help people scale up their business and, as I say, build the business they want so they can live the life they've always dreamed of. That really is the goal, is not just to be some kind of marketing provider. We're big on partnerships and relationships that we can help people get to a whole nother level from where they are today.
Love it. For everybody that is listening, please check out Investor Fuel Live. There's one coming up here in April. We'll have the links there so you guys can go check it out. And also take a look at Investor Machine. If you're at a point now where you think you need some automation and a marketing partner, as Mike describes it, we should definitely look into Investor Machine. Mike, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me for a bit. I know we're going to keep the conversation going. And looking forward to seeing you at the next event, whether it's Family Mastermind or Investor Fuel Mastermind. But thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, great to see you. And thanks for the opportunity to come chat.
Oh, you got it. Anytime, man. All right. We'll catch you later. For everybody that's out there, please follow this podcast, like it, share with your friends. And also, too, if you're watching a clip of this on social media, there's going to be a link to the full podcast on YouTube. So click that so you can watch the full interview with Mike Hambright. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
That's a wrap on today's Real Estate Revelations. Thank you for tuning into the REI Hacker Podcast. Remember, every property has a story, and every deal is a lesson. Until next time, keep hacking the real estate world.